The day I got fired, I had no idea I was about to buy my boss's entire company and destroy his life. Wait, before I tell you how I went from cleaning out my desk to owning the corner office, you need to know something. This story has a twist so crazy that when I first planned it, I didn't even believe it would work. But by the end of this video, you'll see how one moment of standing up for what's right turned into the sweetest revenge story you've ever heard. My name is Nathan, and 6 months ago, I was just another worker bee in a fancy office building downtown. I thought I knew my place. I thought I was safe. I was so wrong. It was a Tuesday morning when everything fell apart. The kind of morning that starts normal and ends with your whole world flipping upside down. I was sitting in the big meeting room on the 15th floor, watching my boss Charles talk about our biggest client. Charles was the kind of guy who wore expensive suits but had cheap ideas. He was tall, always perfectly groomed, and spoke like he owned the world, which, in our little company, he basically did. "This new strategy will bring us millions," Charles said, clicking through his slides. His voice was smooth and confident, like always. But I could see the numbers on the screen, and my stomach dropped. The strategy was terrible. Not just bad, it was going to kill our biggest deal. The client wanted innovation, something fresh and new. Charles was giving them the same old boring approach that failed last year. I looked around the room. My coworkers were nodding along like sheep. Sarah from marketing was taking notes. Tom from sales was smiling and nodding. Nobody else could see it, but this plan was going to lose us everything. My heart started beating fast. I knew I should stay quiet. I knew I should just nod along like everyone else. That's what I'd been doing for 3 years, just keeping my head down, doing my work, hoping someone would notice how hard I tried. But not today. I raised my hand. Charles stopped talking. The room went quiet. Everyone turned to look at me. "Nathan," Charles said, and I could already hear the warning in his voice. "Do you have a question?" "Actually, I have some concerns about this approach," I said. My voice was steady, but inside I was shaking. The client specifically asked for something new. This strategy is exactly what their competitor used last month. If we go with this, we're going to lose them. The silence in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Charles's face went red. Not embarrassed rideau, angry red. His eyes got small and mean, like a snake about to strike. "Nathan," he said slowly, "are you questioning my judgment?" "I'm trying to save our biggest client," I said. The words just came out. I couldn't stop them now. "I have a different idea. Something that could actually work." Charles slammed his hand on the table. The sound made everyone jump. "How dare you?" he hissed. "How dare you embarrass me in front of everyone like this?" "Charles, I'm not trying to embarrass anyone. I'm trying to help. Ooh." "You're trying to make me look stupid," he shouted. His face was getting redder. "You think you know better than me? You think you can do my job?" My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it, but I was already in this deep. I might as well go all the way. "Maybe I do," I said quietly. The room exploded. Not literally, but it felt like it. Everyone gasped. Sarah dropped her pen. Tom's mouth fell open. Charles stood up so fast his chair rolled backward and hit the wall. "Get out," he said. His voice was deadly quiet now, which was somehow scarier than the shouting. "Get out of my building. You're fired." "Charles, wait-o." "Security," he yelled. "Get security up here now." I sat there for a second, stunned. This wasn't how I thought it would go. I thought maybe he'd listen. Maybe he'd see that I was right. Maybe we could work together to fix this. But Charles wasn't that kind of man. He was the kind of man who would rather burn everything down than admit he was wrong. 2 security guards showed up. Big guys in black uniforms. They didn't look mean, just tired. Like this wasn't their first time dragging someone out of a meeting. "Sir," one of them said to me, "we need you to come with us." I looked around the room one more time. My coworkers wouldn't meet my eyes. Sarah was staring at her notebook. Tom was checking his phone. Nobody was going to stand up for me. Nobody was going to say this was wrong. I stood up and walked out. The security guards followed me to my desk. They watched while I packed my things into a cardboard box. My coffee mug, my family photos, the little plant my mom gave me when I started this job. 3 years of my life fit into one small box. Charles appeared at my desk as I was packing. "Let me make something clear," he said, leaning down so only I could hear. "You will never work in this industry again. I know everyone. I will make sure they all know what kind of person you are. A troublemaker. Someone who can't be trusted." I looked up at him. For a second, I saw something in his eyes that wasn't just anger. It was fear. He was scared of me. Scared of what I might do. Scared that maybe, just maybe, I really was better than him. "We'll see," I said. He laughed. It was a cold, mean laugh. "We'll see what? You're nobody, Nathan. You were nobody when you got here, and you're nobody now. The only difference is now everyone knows it." I picked up my box and walked toward the elevator. The security guards followed me all the way to the parking garage. They watched me put my box in my car. They watched me drive away. I sat in my car in the parking lot of a coffee shop for 2 hours, just thinking. I was angry. I was hurt. I was scared about money and my future and what I was going to tell my girlfriend Lisa when I got home. But underneath all of that, I was something else. I was determined. Charles thought he had destroyed me. He thought firing me in front of everyone would break me. He thought I would crawl away and hide and never bother him again. He was wrong. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. First, I called my old college friend Mike, who worked in finance. Then I called my cousin Jenny, who knew about business deals. Then I called 3 other people I hadn't talked to in years. By the time I drove home that night, I had the beginning of a plan. Lisa was waiting for me when I walked in. She took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked. I told her everything. About the meeting, about Charles, about getting fired. I expected her to be upset. I expected her to worry about money and bills and our future. Instead, she smiled. "Good," she said. "Good?" I stared at her. "I just lost my job." "How is that good?" "Because now you can stop pretending that place deserves you," she said. "Nathan, I've watched you come home angry and frustrated for 3 years. I've watched you have amazing ideas that Charles steals or throws away. I've watched you make that company millions of dollars while he takes all the credit." She was right. I knew she was right. "But what am I going to do now?" I asked. Lisa grabbed my hands and looked me right in the eyes. "You're going to show him what a real leader looks like," she said. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Charles's face when he fired me, the way he enjoyed it, the way he thought he had won. But I also kept thinking about the fear in his eyes. He was scared because he knew I was right about the strategy. He was scared because deep down, he knew I could do his job better than he could. Over the next few days, I started digging. I looked up everything I could about the company. Charles looked around the room like he was waiting for someone to tell him this was all a joke. But everyone was just staring at him, waiting to see what would happen next. "You can't do this," he said. His voice cracked a little. "I built this company. I made it what it is." "Actually," I said, "you nearly destroyed it. The client we were talking about 6 months ago, the one with the terrible strategy, we lost them, just like I said we would. We also lost 3 other big clients because of decisions you made. The company's stock price dropped by 30%. Charles was breathing hard now, like he couldn't get enough air. "But don't worry," I continued. "I have plans to fix all of that, starting with some changes in management." "Nathan," Charles said, and for the first time since I'd known him, his voice was small and scared. "We can work this out. We can be partners. I can help you run the company." I looked at him for a long moment. 6 months ago, this man had humiliated me in front of everyone. He had called me a nobody. He had promised to ruin my career. He had enjoyed every second of destroying me. Now he was begging. "Charles," I said quietly, "do you remember what you told me the day you fired me?" He didn't answer. "You said I was nobody. You said I would always be nobody. You said you would make sure I never worked in this industry again." I stood up and walked around to where he was sitting. "Well, guess what? I'm not nobody anymore, and neither are you." I paused, letting that sink in. You're unemployed." The words hung in the air like smoke. "Charles Caldwell," I said, my voice clear and strong. "You're fired." Charles just sat there, staring at me like I had grown two heads. "You can't fire me," he whispered. "This is my company. I've been here for 15 years. "Was your company," I corrected. "And now you have 10 minutes to clean out your office." That's when Charles snapped. He jumped up so fast his chair flew backward. His face went bright red, and the veins in his neck were popping out. "You little nobody!" he screamed. "You think you can waltz in here and take over my life? I'll sue you. I'll destroy you. I'll make sure you lose everything." He was so angry he was spitting. Sarah scooted her chair away from him. Tom looked like he wanted to hide under the table. But I just smiled. "Go ahead," I said calmly. "Sue me. But you'll be doing it as an unemployed person with no money and no company." Charles lunged at me. Actually lunged like he was going to attack me right there in the meeting room. Two security guards appeared in the doorway, the same two guys who had escorted me out 6 months ago. "Mr. Pierce," one of them said, "is there a problem here?" It felt so good to hear them call me Mr. Pierce instead of, "Sir, you need to leave." "Mr. Caldwell is having trouble accepting his termination," I said. "Could you please escort him to his office to collect his things? He has 10 minutes. Charles looked back and forth between me and the security guards. You could see the exact moment when he realized this was really happening, when he understood that everything had changed. His shoulders slumped. The fight went out of him like air from a balloon. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "Yes, it is," I replied. The security guards walked Charles out of the room. As soon as the door closed behind them, everyone started talking at once. "Is this real?" Sarah asked. "How did you buy the company?" Tom wanted to know. "What happens to us?" someone else called out. I held up my hand, and the room went quiet. "Everyone, please listen," I said. "I know this is a shock. I know you're worried about your jobs, but I want you to know that nothing bad is going to happen to any of you. You're all good people who were stuck working for a bad boss." I could see the relief on their faces. "However, things are going to change around here. We're going to start doing things the right way. We're going to treat our clients with respect. We're going to value new ideas. And we're going to work together as a team instead of everyone being afraid to speak up." Sarah raised her hand. "What about the Johnson account, the one we lost after—" "After Charles ignored my advice and went with his terrible strategy," I finished. "I already called them. We're meeting next week to discuss bringing them back." Tom leaned forward. "You think they'll come back?" "I know they will," I said. "Because this time, we're going to give them what they actually want, instead of what Charles thought they should want." Over the next hour, I talked to everyone about the changes I was planning. Better working conditions, more flexible schedules, a system where everyone could share ideas without being afraid of getting yelled at. But the best part was watching Charles through his office window. He was throwing things into boxes, slamming drawers, and talking angrily on his phone. Every few minutes, he would look out at me through the glass, and I would smile and wave. After exactly 10 minutes, the security guards knocked on his door. Time was up. Charles came out carrying 2 boxes and looking like he had aged 10 years in the last hour. His perfect hair was messy. His expensive suit was wrinkled. His face was red and puffy. As he walked past the meeting room, he stopped and stared at me through the glass. I got up and opened the door. "Charles," I said, "before you go, I want to tell you something." He didn't say anything, but he didn't walk away either. "6 months ago, you asked me if I thought I could do your job better than you," I said. "Well, now we're going to find out." Charles's hands were shaking as he held his boxes. "You'll fail," he said. "You don't know what it takes to run a company. You'll run it into the ground within a year." "Maybe," I said. "But at least I'll fail while treating people with respect." That was the last thing I ever said to Charles Caldwell. The security guards walked him to the elevator. The doors closed, and he was gone. Just like that, the man who had made my life miserable for 3 years was out of my life forever. But here's the thing about revenge. It doesn't feel the way you think it will. I thought I would feel happy. I thought I would feel satisfied. I thought firing Charles would make up for all the times he had made me feel small and worthless. Instead, I felt empty. Don't get me wrong, I was glad he was gone. I was proud of what I had accomplished. But standing there in that office, watching him disappear, I realized something important. This wasn't really about Charles anymore. It was about what I was going to do next. The next few weeks were crazy. I had to learn how to run a company while also fixing all the problems Charles had created. I worked 16-hour days. I barely slept. Lisa brought me dinner to the office most nights because I was too busy to come home. But slowly, things started to improve. The first big win came when the Johnson Group agreed to meet with us. They were our biggest client before Charles's terrible strategy drove them away. I walked into that meeting with Sarah and Tom, and my heart was pounding just like it had 6 months ago in the other meeting room. But this time, I was the one in charge. Mr. Johnson was a tall, serious man with gray hair and smart eyes. He looked at me across the conference table and said, "So, you're the new owner." "Yes, sir," I said. "And you're the one who tried to speak up in that meeting 6 months ago," he continued. I was surprised he remembered. "Yes, sir." Mr. Johnson smiled for the first time since I'd met him. "Good," he said, "because your old boss cost us a lot of money with his stupidity. We're willing to give you a chance to make it right." I presented the strategy I had wanted to share 6 months ago. The one Charles had refused to listen to. The one that had gotten me fired. Mr. Johnson loved it. "This is exactly what we needed," he said. "Why didn't your previous management team suggest this?" "Because they didn't listen to good ideas," I said. "That's not going to be a problem anymore." We got the Johnson Group back. Not only that, but they signed an even bigger contract than before. Word started to spread in our industry. The company that had been struggling under Charles was suddenly doing amazing things. Our stock price went up. Other clients started calling. But the real change was in the office. People were smiling again. They were sharing ideas in meetings. They weren't afraid to speak up when they disagreed with something. The whole place felt different. Sarah came to me one day with an idea for a new marketing campaign. Under Charles, she never would have dared suggest anything. "I don't know if this is good," she said nervously, "but I was thinking we could try." Her idea was brilliant. We used it, and it brought in 3 new clients. Tom started a weekly meeting where anyone could share ideas for improving the company. Some of the best suggestions came from people Charles had never even talked to. One of our junior employees, a quiet girl named Amy, suggested a new way to organize our project files. It saved everyone 2 hours of work every week. "Why didn't anyone think of this before?" I asked her. Amy looked down at her hands. "I suggested it to Mr. Caldwell once," she said quietly. "He told me to stick to my own job and stop wasting his time." That made me so angry I had to take a walk around the building to cool down. This was what Charles had been throwing away. All these smart, creative people with good ideas, and he had been too proud and too scared to listen to them. 3 months after I took over, we had our best quarter in 5 years. 6 months later, we had grown by 40%. A year later, we were the most successful company in our industry. But the story isn't over yet, because Charles wasn't done with me. I was working late one Thursday night when my lawyer called. "Nathan," he said, "we have a problem. Charles Caldwell is suing you." My heart sank. "For what?" "He's claiming you stole the company from him illegally. He says you used inside information to manipulate the stock price. He wants the company back, plus damages." I sat down hard in my chair. "Can he win?" "Probably not," my lawyer said, "but he can make this very expensive and very ugly. Are you ready for a fight?" I thought about it for about 2 seconds. "Bring it on," I said. The lawsuit took 8 months. 8 months of depositions and meetings and paperwork. 8 months of Charles trying to prove that I had cheated somehow. But here's the beautiful part. I hadn't cheated. Everything I did was completely legal. I had bought stock in a public company using my own money and investors who believed in me. There was nothing illegal about it. Charles's lawyers couldn't find any evidence of wrongdoing because there wasn't any. All they had was an angry ex-boss who couldn't accept that someone he thought was nobody had outsmarted him. The judge threw out the case. Not only that, but he ordered Charles to pay my legal fees. Charles had to pay me $50,000 for the privilege of failing to destroy me. But the real victory came a year later, at the annual industry conference. This was the big event where all the companies in our field got together to show off and make deals. Charles used to love this conference. He would strut around in his expensive suits, bragging about his success. This year, I was the keynote speaker. I walked out onto the stage in front of 500 people, the same people who used to see Charles as this big, important boss. Now they were all looking at me. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said into the microphone, "my name is Nathan Pierce, and I want to tell you about the importance of listening to your employees." I told them the whole story. About the meeting where Charles fired me, about buying the company, about all the amazing ideas our team had when they weren't afraid to speak up. The audience loved it. They laughed when I described Charles's face when he realized I owned the company. They cheered when I talked about our success. But the best part was when I saw Charles in the audience. He was sitting in the back, wearing a cheap suit and looking miserable. He had been trying to start his own company, but nobody wanted to work with him. Word had gotten around about what kind of boss he was. Our eyes met across the room. He looked at me with pure hatred. I smiled and continued my speech. "The lesson here," I said, "is that good ideas can come from anywhere, from the newest employee or the person you least expect. But you have to be willing to listen. You have to be willing to admit when someone else is right." I paused and looked directly at Charles. "And if you're not willing to do that, maybe you shouldn't be in charge." The audience erupted in applause. They gave me a standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. When I looked back to where Charles had been sitting, he was gone. After my speech, people crowded around me. They wanted to know about job openings at my company. They wanted to hear more about our success story. One young man reminded me of myself a few years ago, nervous, eager, full of ideas but afraid to share them. "Mr. Pierce," he said, "I work for a company where nobody listens to the employees. My boss takes credit for our ideas and blames us when things go wrong. What should I do?" I thought about Charles, about how he had made me feel worthless and small, about how he had tried to destroy my future. But I also thought about what had happened since then, how standing up to him had led to the best thing that ever happened to me. "Stand up for yourself," I told the young man. "Speak up when you know you're right. It might cost you your job, but it might also change your entire life." He nodded seriously and shook my hand. 2 years later, that young man started his own company. He sent me a letter thanking me for the advice. As for Charles, I heard he eventually gave up trying to start his own business. He took a job working for someone else, a job much lower than the one he used to have, a job where he had to follow orders instead of giving them. I don't hate him anymore. I actually feel sorry for him. He could have been a good leader if he had just learned to listen. He could have kept his company if he had just been willing to admit when someone else had a better idea. But pride is a dangerous thing. It makes you think you're always right. It makes you think other people don't matter. And eventually, it destroys you. I still run the company. We're bigger and more successful than ever. We've won awards for being the best place to work in our industry. We've been featured in magazines as an example of how to treat employees right. But the best part isn't the money or the fame or the awards. The best part is walking through the office and seeing people who aren't afraid. People who know their ideas matter. People who know they can speak up without getting fired. Sarah is now our head of marketing. Tom runs our sales department. Amy, the quiet girl with the great idea about organizing files, is now a project manager. They're all doing amazing work because someone finally listens to them. And Lisa? She quit her job and came to work with me. She runs our human resources department, making sure we hire good people and treat them well. Every day when I walk into that building, I remember the day Charles fired me. I remember how small and worthless he made me feel. I remember thinking my career was over. But then I remember what happened next, how that terrible moment became the best thing that ever happened to me. Sometimes the worst day of your life is actually the first day of your new life. Sometimes getting knocked down is exactly what you need to learn how to stand up. And sometimes the person who tries to destroy you ends up giving you the greatest gift of all, the chance to prove them wrong. Charles thought he was firing a nobody. Instead, he created his own replacement. And that, my friends, is the sweetest revenge of all. This story proves that standing up for what's right, even when it costs you everything, can lead to something better than you ever imagined. Sometimes the people who try to break you are actually showing you how strong you really are. If you enjoy this story, please like and subscribe.